Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to all those joining us for this evening's Nutshell discussion. My name is Kelly Gilbo, and I'm one of the two outreach coordinators for the Savannah Institute. Before we get started, I'll just tell you a little bit about the Savannah Institute if you're not familiar. We're a nonprofit organization, and we focus on research and education about agroforestry, which means working with trees that produce crops, which help make farms more profitable, resilient, and healing for the environment. A lot of our work is doing research in cooperation with farmers. We connect farmers and scientists at universities and other organizations. Lots of exciting events and resources are shared through our website and our in-person farm field days. In December, we've got a perennial farm gathering. Definitely keep an eye out for that. And I just encourage you to take a look at our website, savannahinstitute.org, to learn more about all those kinds of opportunities. I'd like to also thank our sponsors, the Hegner Family Foundation and North Central SARE. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to bring you these discussions for free. So thanks again to all of you for joining. Just sort of the agenda for the evening. If you're joining us on the computer, know that there's a little chat box that you can type in any question or thought during the discussion, and we can definitely address those during the Q&A session. That Q&A session will happen about a quarter till 7 Central Time, and at that point I'll turn on the Q&A queue, and any of you can use your mic to ask a question or have a conversation about our topic this evening. So stay tuned for that, definitely. So without further ado, we're honored to welcome our presenter for the evening, Dan Shepard. Dan and his team have a roughly 4,000-acre farm with about 300 acres of pecan orchards. They also have an on-farm store and processing plant for the pecans that they raise. Dan graduated in 1978 from Truman University with a BS in agriculture and has been managing that farm since that time. So really has a ton of experience. He's been married to his wife Jan for many years, and she actually runs the store and the office. Pecan Valley, the name of their farm, has one full-time employee and also a few seasonal workers during harvest time. So we're really excited to welcome Dan. We're going to see a lot of great pictures of the farm and learn all about the process. And so with that, Dan, I think you're ready to go on your end. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Kelly. Thanks for the nice introduction. I tell you, it's pretty good. Just a little bit where we're located. We're in Clifton Hill, Missouri, and I'm sure everybody's heard of Clifton Hill. It's 114 people, I'm sure, but I live south of town. Actually, we're about 90 miles south of the Iowa border and about halfway between Kansas City and St. Louis, so that kind of gives you about the idea where we are. I consider myself really almost a Zone 5. I'm in a frost pocket here where it gets very cold, and sometimes by this time of year we've already had our killing frost, but this year we have not. So I'm going to let everybody know where I'm located at and what's going on. We, like Kelly said, we're a large farm. We've got about 4,000 acres total. Most of that is corn, soybeans, and wheat, mostly soybeans, though, on about 3,000 acres of that. The problem is that I'm really too small to be a big farmer, in my opinion, but too big to be a small farmer. I figure I need about 5,000 or 6,000 acres of row crop to really fill the equipment, the sprayers, buy in the bulk, and how I need to buy to be efficient. And, and if I had 300 acres, I'd be a little more, to pretty well handle that all myself and without that, and work the pecans and stuff in that deal. But, when the pecans are ready, I would have to be planting corn or soybeans or harvesting this, that, and the other. I have a really good tenant. He and I see alike on most all the farming stuff. He also has some big equipment like bulldozers and track hoes and that sort of thing that when I need something to pinch, he's more than welcome to come and give me a hand at a really decent price. So, it works both ways for both of us. So we're pretty happy about our situation we have. Like I said, we raise pecans, and we have pecans on about 300 acres. Of that, 200 acres is in production now, and we have about another 100 acres in new orchards, anywhere from about 8 years to about 18 or 19 years, and some of those are just getting ready to start to get in production, and they're all grafted, and the newer and the 100 acres are grafted to a lot more of the newer pecan varieties than what we have. Like I say, we're in a pecan business. My father, one of his favorite sayings says, you can make a little doing what everybody else does, but you stand to make a lot more doing what nobody else is doing. And up in this part of the country, there was really nobody. A lot of pecans being raised up here, but nobody was planting any new orchards and grafting trees and stuff to speak of any amount. And my father was very instrumental in that. And kind of the old saying, "Only old men plant trees," is really not all the way true, because my old man sure made me plant a whole bunch of them though when I was a young man. And I couldn't figure out why, but now I'm glad he did, and I wish he could see the farm now. I'm sure he'd be pretty proud of it. It's a little different. Like I say, Jan and I run the farm. She runs the store. She does all the book work. She pays all the bills and all that, collects all the money, and she tells me how much is in the bank account, and then I go spend it. So we've had a pretty good working relation. I think we've been married just a little over 34 years now, and she's my right hand mate, that's for sure. I have one employee, Justin. He's a pretty good new pecan grafter. He's been with me for just about a year now, but he's really picked up on grafting pecans and pruning and all that, and he's found out that there's an awful lot of mowing in the pecan business. Kelly tapped on that really we're in agroforestry, and that has been a kind of a big thing. Back then we planned to be in agroforestry, really. We planted our second orchard. First, we planted our first orchard back in 1970 as our experimental orchard. And my father went around and hunted for trees and stuff that were grafted, and that we could graft to kind of check and see what we might want to put on our other orchard, which was in 1981. We planted nuts and farmed the same time. That year we had wheat, and we planted the nuts and had trees. Since then we've went to corn and soybeans, rotation with wheat in there, and then finally the trees got big, we went to hay. But we just called it farming between the pecan trees, and then they came up with this fancy name and called it agroforestry. So that's kind of where they go. Here's one of our older pictures here, kind of on the hill a little bit. You can see hay on the hill and going some corn in the bottom. Also, here's one of our first pictures that kind of dug some up here. This was about 35 years ago. This was our orchard and just getting started. Just getting ready to start grafting some of these trees, or we're in the process of grafting them to different varieties and stuff. And here's the picture of those same trees at the same spot as of yesterday. So you can tell that we've thinned a lot of the trees out. The trees have gotten a lot bigger, and we can also go ahead and see we got a pretty decent pecan crop on there. I say the last thing we did, we were in the hay business, because we had a lot of livestock on the farm, and we were using the grass between the pecan trees in the spring, cutting it and using it for livestock feed. I'm no longer in the livestock business, so I didn't really have much use for the hay, so we started just strictly mowing it and letting that grass scrapings turn back into fertilizer excuse me, and go down into the soil. That left us a problem with quite a bit of grass and stuff out there. A real good friend of mine was really short of hay this year. I said, look, you come in and mow it and pay me for the fertilizer for whatever you take off. And we figured up it was about $23 of fertilizer in each big round bale of hay, and worked out good for him. He got plenty of hay. I got the money back from the nutrients he took off the soil, and I got the first mowing of the orchard done, and now we didn't have to go and mow all that extra grass and keep chopping it up all summer. So it worked out both. So I guess we're back into agroforestry now. Again, all our rows are grafted. Like I say, our trees are grafted. And each row is really a different variety per se. I mean, the whole row down through there is the same variety. We may have 2 or 3 rows together that are the same variety, or we may have every other row would be some. And we run about 8 or 10 different varieties in our main orchard. They're all numbered and and named, so when we go down to harvest, we harvest the same row and to keep them separate. The main reason for that is it's really a lot easier for when we clean them and also when we crack them and shell them and do other stuff. It makes it a lot easier. A lot of people mix them up. They think it's great to have an orchard and have, scattered all kinds of different varieties scattered all through it. If you're going to sell them bulk and not have to worry about it, I guess it's all right. But if you're going to go ahead and process them, you need to keep them separate if you can. It sure makes it easier, because it's really a pain for us if we have to, shell a bunch of stuff or crack a bunch of stuff that's, all different size nuts and this, even though we do have a sizer for that sort of stuff. I've got a little short video here of shaking and harvesting, and I'll play that, and I'll turn the volume down just a little bit and see if I can talk over it, and we'll go from there. See the tree, tractor comes up the tree and shakes it within normally about a second, 2 seconds. Pretty well everything's down. The leaves come off, all the nuts fall down out of it. And if you notice, the limbs came up, which is kind of nice. The tree thinks, thank you, now I'm not weighted down anymore. Also, you can hear her coming falling down. Now, you'll see the track camera chirp because it hurts when those pecans hit you on the head. And, of course, everything comes down, a few sticks and all that sort of thing. Then we come along with the harvesters. They have a rubber finger that kind of sweeps them up. A fan blows the grass and leaves out. Sticks roll out the back. The pecans go in there. Notice we got cabs on the tractors. That's kind of helped keeps the dust and the leaves and the heat and the cold off my employees. And I got some pretty good guys that come in and help me harvest about 3 weeks out of the year. Here they're going in a trailer, and from there they will be hauled up to the cleaning plant. And those harvesters work pretty good. We can only pick up about 1,500 pounds of pecans about every hour on the average with those machines in decent running pecans and stuff. So sure beats the hand pickers and stuff. You just really can't. And they get 98% of the nuts. They just very rarely leave anything in the ground. From there, we bring the pecans up to our cleaning plant. And when those harvesters pick up, they pick everything up. They pick anything up that's anywhere close to the size of a pecan and anywhere close to the weight of a pecan. Now, we get shotgun holes. We get, chopped up deer bones, rocks, pebbles, walnuts, anything else that's out there. We even pick up quite a few pin oak acorns that the crows bring in, drop, and reach down and get a pecan and take back with them. But in this cleaning plant, we take those at whatever it is and run them up the elevator and dump them in a pit, and they auger up into a cleaning deal. Takes most of the dirt out. Any more sticks and stuff comes out of there if what the harvesters put in there. They run through another roller system that kind of a drum that lets all the small stuff out, like some hulls and that stuff maybe still on them. And then they elevate up into that larger green bin in the corner. That bin can hold about 12,000 pounds of pecans. It's sloped down and also has a vented floor in it where we can put where we have a large fan that can go ahead and take put a lot of air in there, and we can dry pecans at night or on the weekends or whenever else. From there, they really come out and go into an aspirator, and they feed out of that bin. And an aspirator is a deal where it really sucks the pecans. Air comes in any light ones. It pulls a lot of those light ones out, and that helps, especially if we have a lot of scab in the ear. And and any dust and any small light stuff, it takes it out. And we can set that on how much air volume it's pulling out of there, so we can adjust it so we get really just the good pecans and leave and take just the bad ones. So it all works really well. But really the main thing that really helps out the most, and probably the neatest piece of equipment on this whole deal, is that piece of blue equipment, and it's got a computer in it over there, and it's called Inspection Master. And what it does, it can run about 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of pecan an hour through it, and it takes a picture of every nut that drops through there. And like I say, they're coming through pretty fast. I'll show you in a minute a little video of it. But what it does, it looks at every nut and says if it's the wrong color, it kicks it out, or if it's the wrong texture, it kicks it out, or if it's too big, you can set it to kick those out, or too small. And it gets about 95% of all that stuff out. It'll knock the deer bones out or whatever, shotgun holes, that kind of stuff. Sometimes it doesn't do quite as much on the rocks as they're a little heavier, but it uses a blast of air to move the stuff that really we don't want. It really cuts the labor down a lot. Here a couple of years ago, we had a tremendous amount of scab on some varieties, and we were blowing right at 39% of the nuts out. So every 100 nuts that went in there, 39 of them, that machine was taken out. So we would have had to do by hand, and that has really cut a lot of labor and stuff. Also, we use it at night. A lot of times I'll run stuff through and not do the hand, but it also gets rid of a lot of the wetter pecans, that sort of stuff. And then it comes up to what we call the Lucy belt. And the Lucy belt is this, and if anybody remembers the I Love Lucy show where Lucy and Ethel were at the candy factory and they were wrapping and boxing chocolates, whatever. Well, this is what it is. This belt never stops. We just got to keep running, and this is where we pick off anything misses, broken pecans, that sort of thing, and I'll play it, and you can see how fast it runs. That machine's taking a picture of every one of those nuts as it comes out of it and deciding what it's going to keep. And you see we're not picking very much stuff off of it. It's doing a pretty good job of taking that stuff out. So from there, they elevate up into plastic bins, and those bins will hold right at 1,000 pounds of nuts when they're full. They're ventilated, so we'll get some air movement through them, but they still don't want to be careful to put a lot of wet pecans in there. So from there, we store them out there. That building is unheated, so they stay really nice and go ahead and dry. Anything that is dry and maybe we want to keep for next year and stuff, we have a fairly large freezer that we can drive a forklift in that we can store about 75,000 pounds of whole nuts in. So, and these bins will stack right up and they will stack in the freezer. So it's as we know what we're going to use and stuff and what we're going to save back for next year, that's what we put in. As you see, these bins are all stackable. They also have a place where we can put a tag on them, where we can write the variety, the date they were harvested, whether they're dry or they're damp, or they're a rerun. And by rerun, I mean they've been run once through the cleaning system, but they haven't had the Lucy belt. And a lot of times we get really busy, and I'll run those through at night. So everything will be ready for next morning. And then we'll get a rainy day or something, and we'll go in and run a bunch of these reruns through, run them back through again, and then we'll do the final sort by hand on those. So whatever. And like I say, the main thing is we keep them all separate by varieties. Our next one is a dryer. We built this dryer. I bought a 400 bushel gravity flow wagon and took a cutting torch and we cut the floor out of it and put expanded metal on the floor. Set it up on some concrete blocks, put some plywood around it, sealed it up real tight, and then put a huge, well, not a huge, but a pretty good centrifugal fan, grain drying fan on the other end. We can blow air in there and blows air up through there. Like I said, that thing will hold right at about 10,000 pounds of nuts. I also have a small heater. You can see the black box sitting there that we spin around and put on there. It really doesn't heat the pecans up, but it dries that air just a little bit, and it really speeds the drying of those pecans up. That way we can get started harvesting a little earlier. We might not, even if we're getting shuck split, we don't have to wait for a frost to open up. We can go ahead and pull them on out and get them, because in our store we like everybody kind of wants, well, newer this year's pecans and stuff. So that's kind of helps speed things up, and we can get harvest started a little bit earlier on some varieties if we can utilize these drying bins and stuff. Like I say, I got one, and then the other one over there we can use on the weekends when we're not running stuff through. So it works out pretty well. got another little video for you. This is where we're going to wash the pecans and get them ready to crack. I'll start it up and we'll talk through it a little bit. And you can see a forklift in those bins, and they have a double-way entry one that doesn't have the bottom on it, and the way he's hooked in there now, he can spin that mitt around and dump that 1,000 pounds of pecans into a vibrating feeder bin, into that elevator, and then into the washer and the sanitizer. Most of this equipment I bought used. I bought it out of Texas, this, that, and the other, out of some plants that closed down. I know it's kind of old, but that stuff's really expensive, and this stuff works great for what I need, and it does pretty good. Here the pecans are going in the washer. You see them, it picks them up and dumps them in. It pretty well takes any of the rocks or dirt. There's the sanitizer. It dumps into those, and it dumps them in there, and they're in there for a couple of minutes, normally the pecans. And then from there, they're run out onto one of our drying tables, and each one of these tables will hold right at 1,000 pounds of pecans. You can see they're wet when they're coming off, and then we let them dry. Normally dry them for about at least 1 day and sometimes 2 days. That sanitizer water has a chlorine smell to it, and you can smell the chlorine back there. City water you drink has about 2 parts per million. Swimming pools about 5 parts per million chlorine. That sanitizer, the water in the sanitizer there, is a little over 1,000 parts per million, and that's enough to really kind of burn your hands a little bit if you're in there for in that water for some time. So it's killing any bacteria or anything else, and it's sanitizing, because like I say, these pecans are, we shake them on the ground, or some of them are already laying on the ground, and I can't keep the crows and the birds and the deer and the coons and everything else from them, but we do the best we can and get them in and sanitize them. The nice thing about that chlorine is that it evaporates out, and we don't have chlorine flavor to them, and so you don't ever taste it. But it's one of those nicer things. Another little short video here. After the pecans are on the drying tables and they've dried, we run. This is a little older system than what we're running now. We put a new system in last year. I haven't got a new video of it, but this will kind of show you what we're doing on our crackers and stuff. We've now gone to all Savage crackers, which is the far end one. I've gotten rid of the Quantzas because Savage bought Quantz out, and I can't get any more parts for them to speak of, and it just Savage are doing a good job for me, and go from there. And I'll start this video up, and you can see what we're doing. As you can tell, it's noisy in there. We all normally wear earmuffs, so we're not listening to all the noise. Those crackers are going. They sound like machine guns going off. Here they are coming off and elevating up into the main Quantz cracker, and that cracker would do a little over 700 nuts a minute, and you can see them there. It uses air and pretty well just shatters the shell off of them, and they drop down into a vibrating tray where we sit down and pick off any one that the cracker happened to miss, or a bad one or whatever else. We pick those off. From there, they elevate up in another hopper that feeds the blower. That blower blows most of the shells and light pieces and stuff out, where mainly you get just a few big pieces of shells and nut meats, and they're elevated into the bagging hopper. And from there, they're bagged up into 3-pound bags. And this is our blown pecans. This is mainly what we sell. We do some shelling and stuff, but these, it works out pretty good. The crackers I have now are a little more, a little faster. They'll crack about 400 nuts a minute, and I've got 5 of those crackers. So there's a lot of pecans coming down that trough at a time. So works pretty good. As you can see on this next slide, here's our new system set up, the different crackers and stuff. You can also see the barrels of the trash that blows out. So we get normally we're taking almost half of the product out and gets rid of those shells and dust. And why do we want to give the customer trash? They want to buy a product and try not to do that. It's been good for us, and it's really improved our sales over the years. We'll get a little bit more into that in just a minute. we say here's our finished product. Mainly what we do is it's a little better than cracked pecans. We call them blown pecans. Like I say, we've taken most of the shells out. We also put them in a clear bag so everybody can see exactly what they're getting. There's no question of being like we used to have in the old paper bags. You didn't really know what you got until you open it up. This way you can see exactly what we have. We also put a tape around it, which is non-taper proof, and there are a few small holes in there also to get a little air and stuff through them. You got to be careful with plastic bags. They will tend to mold on you if you're not careful. Want to make sure you don't want them to mold. And the old paper bags weren't quite as bad because you get a little air movement through it, but these plastics you don't. The moisture really has to be just about right. You want it where they're rubbery enough that when the crackers crack them, that it doesn't smash the nut meats and you have a bunch of junk and then it gets blown out. Or you don't want them where they are too rubbery, too much moisture, then they will tend to mold on you. Now, when we do the completely shelled out ones and stuff, there will be a little bit more moisture because we want a lot better halves, and then we can dry those pecan halves and stuff, the nut meats, after we get done with them before we bag them and get them right on down to the moisture we need to. Everybody wants to know how the heck do you know when they're drying stuff, and they make fancy testers and stuff, but I've never seen one that really worked very well. The best way to do is just eat a few of them. You can tell if you bite into it, it's rubbery, it's still too wet, or if it shatters in the little bitty pieces when you bite into it, well, it's a little too dry, so you try to just pick that little kind of sweet spot in there when they're just about right. And that only comes with experience in working through that to make sure that they're just decent. Also, being grafted makes a huge difference because each cracker can be set for different pecans, so we get a nice mix or that sort of deal. And when you're cracking all the pecans the same size or same variety, and the cracker can all be set and it does an excellent job. You don't have one that's got a real thick shell that the cracker won't crack, or one that's got a real thin shell and it'll just smash it. So that's another thing for having grafted and keeping them all separate and stuff down those rows, the orchard. We're on a U.S. highway. We're on U.S. Highway 24. I'm really about 15 miles from town of Mobley. It's about 12 or 13,000 people. So really kind of out in the middle of nowhere, you might say, on a highway. I do have a big, huge yellow sign there that directs everybody down to the farm. Don't want a whole lot on our sign, just enough to tell people that, hey, that's pecans, and a phone number that if they're driving by, if they want to call and see if we're open or what we have. And then sign we're just open through December, no errors point where we are. We've done a lot of advertising in the past, advertised on the radio, word of mouth, Facebook, internet income is becoming a huge part of it probably. I go to car shows, I show a car and stuff, and I take some pecans a lot of times with me and have a pan out sitting next to me and have people come by and, hey, samples, do you want a handful of pecans? Have some. And it's kind of funny. Oh, no, I don't like pecans. I said, well, have you ever tried any of these? I'll try some of these. Oh, no, I'll just try them. Well, they pick one or two up and say, wow, these are really good. And I said, yeah. Where do you know? Well, I get them from, in a little bag in a grocery store that's been hanging there for 6 months. I said, yep, that's probably why they're pretty rancid, not the best thing in the world. And most people have had a great, kind of maybe a bad experience, but I kind of turned a lot around. And on top of that, one of the first ones that did that, I have a lady comes up and spends about $1,800 with me every fall because her husband was a car show and she came by and tried my pecans. So you never know. We're a little bit of something like that can end up to some great big sales for you. So that's it. Down there, you can see from the highway, you can see our operation. It's little different gray buildings. It's kind of hard to see the dark blue roofs and stuff, but we're highly visible on the highway, and we also have a lot of pecan trees out on the highway for looks. We really don't harvest them. They're not grafted or anything, but they make a nice thing down the highway. The highway department's tickled to death they're there, and it kind of beautifies their highway stuff. We adopt 4 miles of highway. We do the mowing on it. Keeps the farm looking nice and clean, and with those pecan trees, they know sign on the highway says Shepherd Farms and mowing, and then also they start seeing the pecan trees. They know they're getting close to to where they need to be, especially from the out-of-state people. They know when they start seeing pecan trees, they need to be looking for the yellow sign, which in turn is really hard to miss. So anyway, here was our first store about 30 years ago. We moved a house trailer in, or have an office trailer, a store in one end, office in the other. We were in that for about a year and a half just to kind of see how things worked. Like I say, everybody kind of starts out small, I guess, and tried our hand at selling buffalo meat and pecans and all that kind of stuff. This is our store now, office and store, and then back behind in this building is also where we do all the processing, all the cracking and blowing and shelling and that kind of stuff. My wife, she's in charge of all the flowers. She does a great job with that. People like to see the flowers. We keep, the lawn mowed, neat, nice. And people like that, dog, and they like to see people, that are proud of their place, because that means maybe tends to be they're proud of their product and stuff. Now we're only open 3 months out of the year, October, November, December. Matter of fact, we open up next Monday and be for 3 months pretty straight. Open 6 days a week. We are closed on Sundays. We do internet sales, but we have them call in. The customers call in with a credit card. We don't take those over the internet. To do all that, it gets kind of expensive, and then the shipping is quite a bit different on a lot of places. And some products we cannot ship to, like California and places. So we have them come in. We figure the shipping separate, whether it goes UPS or by the postal distributor and stuff, and like that. I really don't feel it's right to, if I'm going to ship some person 30 miles away a couple of bags of pecans, or ship somebody to Florida. The same amount. The shipping is quite a bit different, so that's the other. Also, I could make a lot more selling my pecans to a sheller have the past 5 or 6 years. The wholesale, bulk price of pecans has really been high, and I could have made a lot more money without having to mess with doing the cracking and all that kind of stuff. But I like to have 1,000 small customers compared to 1 or 2 big customers. I keep my prices pretty high, I raise them a little bit every few years, kind of keep up with inflation and expenses and stuff. But we're making a good profit on our pecans, and like I say, we have a lot of people come in, and if I lose 1 or 2 customers, it's not a big deal. But if I was selling to a sheller or something, or maybe China stops buying pecans and the market falls out, I'll still be able to sell all my pecans to my retail customers. So, I'm happy. It works out well. Inside our store, we sell, chocolate candies and jams and jellies and sugar-free jams and honey and syrups and that sort of stuff. The cooler in the bag back there has pecans in them and stuff. I like to keep them in there, that sort of thing. Out of here, also out of the back, and the big cooler in there and stuff, and freezers, we sell a lot of pecans to grocery stores. They'll buy a lot of bags, and they'll scatter them out through their stores and stuff, and it works out good for everybody on that. Also, we sell to these bulk food stores that people come in. Those really become a big market for us, and people buying bulk food are kind of more into buying those blown pecans, especially in some farther away than right around here where they don't have access to a lot of pecans. And we have peddlers that come by, people that buy quite a few pecans from us, and they peddle 10 bags here and 5 bags there and whatever else. I do have a price break on 100 bags, but that's pretty well about it. I don't go any lower than that. That's why I keep my wholesale customers at wholesale, and then my retail customers at retail. And so far, we've been able to sell everything we raise, and that was pretty important to me. I wanted to make sure we could do that, and we are doing that. In our store, we have a big picture window that you can stand and there and look at us while we're working in the back when we're cracking and shelling and blowing pecans and stuff. People like to see that. They like to see how clean it is or how dirty it is, because when we're cracking, shells and dust are flying everywhere. But after we get done, everything, cleaned up and stuff, and everything works out good. Like I say, we have nothing to hide, and that's the main thing is people know that, hey, this is where my pecans are processed. Everything looks nice and neat and clean back there. And also keeps my, the employees back there on their toes and stuff, that knows that people are always watching them, and and they want to make sure everything does everything great. So that works out real well for us also. Like I said, we were in the buffalo business for years. We ran it for 40 some odd years. We had a large herd at one time, maybe up to over 900 head. Then we kind of got back down to meat business and stuff. Had some meat inspection, some new rule changes and stuff, and finally decided to get out of the buffalo business here about 5 or 6 years ago. Kind of miss the old gals, but I don't really miss it when it's this cold and snowy to shovel gates out and check on waters and that kind of stuff. It was a big draw for us. We were open 12 months out of the year. We sell buffalo meat year-round. Sold pecans year-round, maybe the pecans in the fall, but we did sell it year-round. We were also in the native warm season grass business. We raised eastern gamma grass seed. We were the largest producer of that stuff in the country, and that was mainly busy most of the time in January, February, and March. So spend most of my time, doing that. And the grass business was good to us. It paid off all the debt on the farm and bought a lot of new equipment, that sort of stuff. So really couldn't complain. Had a big flood about 6-7 years ago, and I kind of burned out and said just a good time to quit. The pecans were where they were really needing a lot of expertise, so it worked out well. And like I say, we kept the store open 12 months out of the year then, but now we're just open 3 months. Back then, to get more people out also, we raised sweet corn. That's some pretty good ground out here in the bottom. They could raise a consistent crop of sweet corn every year, and being in the pecan business with air blast sprayers and stuff, we could take care of the earworms and that sort of stuff. And people knew that they could come and get some quality sweet corn from us. We normally have sweet corn about 4 days a year in the summertime, and on those days we would sell anywhere from 30 to 40,000 ears a day. And one of those days, 4 days, and matter of fact, we put about 4,000 ears in a pickup truck, and when the crowd got there and the little blue hairs and stuff, they would come in and they could clean a pickup truck at 4,000 ears within as little as 9 minutes. Could empty it. Kind of shows you we had people that schedule their vacations around my sweet corn when I was going to have it. People from Iowa and Illinois would come get it. I sold it pretty reasonable, but we made it up on volume. We sold a lot of volume. So that was part of the nice thing. Also then, while we were doing that, we would have peaches shipped in from Campbell, Missouri, down by the Boot Hill. They would bring them up here. A pretty good profit in peaches. We had the coolers to store them and to hold them, which was nice, and then box them up, and especially we had peaches with sweet corn. It would be some big days at the cash register, that's for sure. So anything else? And like I say, just keep people coming to the farm, because the more people come to the farm, the more stuff they can buy and stuff. Probably one of the better things I ever came up with was the pumpkins. And one year I thought, well, hell, I'll raise a few pumpkins and put some pumpkins out and sell some pumpkins. Well, that year was the pumpkin year, and I had about 500 pumpkins to sell. And I set them out there, and, for $1 or $2 a piece, something like that. I don't remember. And, I wasn't selling hardly any. Nobody wanted to buy a pumpkin. I got to looking, everybody in their monkey was selling pumpkins all up and down the highway because it was a pumpkin year. I said, the heck with this, I'll just give them away. So run some ads on the radio, come to Shepherd Farms, Pecan Valley, and get your free pumpkin. And everybody gets a free pumpkin. Grandma, granddad, mom, dad, the kids, everybody comes out and gets a free pumpkin, come pick them out. So we raised some pretty good pumpkins. Those are some pretty nice-sized jack-o'-lanterns, and we did that every year. My gosh, when we had pumpkins on the weekends, my gosh, the traffic could be crazy. And I could make a lot more by giving a dang pumpkin away than I could by ever trying to sell one. Like I say, some years were pumpkin years, some years weren't. And but like I say, they were very good money makers for us. The little kids sure enjoyed it. Mom and Dad and Granddad sure liked it also. Some of the stuff gets people come to the farm. I guess we hold walnuts for years and stuff for Hammonds. Get people come up, and while they're standing in line waiting to be holed, they'd come in the store and pick up quite a bit of stuff here, which also worked out pretty good for us. With all the buffalo around, we had feeding a few bulls for slaughter and stuff, and some corn laying on the ground, and we got geese decided they kind of like coming in. We didn't harass them, and we would normally keep anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 geese on the farm in the fall and winter. And people back then would come out just to see the geese, as they weren't as common as they are now. But 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, that was a big draw. And people come out and see the geese, and while they're there, they come up and help themselves some buffalo meat and pecans and some other stuff, and Jersey snack sticks and that sort of stuff. So it's worked out pretty good for us. The future looks bright as far as I can see, in my part of the business, what we do. I enjoy what we do, and I really, I guess, have been doing this for so long. I really probably don't know how to do anything else very well, maybe. But anyway, the pecan business has been good to us, and I sure enjoy it and stuff. Just kind of close out a few little things, and this, that, and the other. I kind of want to talk about is, you're selling a product. You need to sell yourself first, and when people come in, you need to greet them with a big smile, and and talk with them, and ask them where they're from, or where they're going. Hey, would you need a free Missouri State map or something like that? People like to be talked to. People like to ask and stuff, and keep the place looking nice. I was talking to some other people here a while back, and they had a little store, and their worst and kind of grown up, brushy and weedy place was right in front of their place, and the back and way back in the back where they had everything all mowed up nice and looking nice, this, that, and the other. So, well, that's just kind of backwards. I never thought of it that way. I said, yeah, I guess it would. So that's one of the things. You want to give customers what they want, not what you want to give them, and and give a quality product. I know a number of years ago, a good friend of the family was in the pecan business over west of here, and he had been harvesting pecans, and they'd left some on the ground from the year before, and they picked them up, and they laid out all winter and summer, and that fall they picked them up with the new ones, and he was cracking them, and they were going down the line, and I'd reach over and pick one of those off. You could tell them they were just as dark purple as could be, and if you'd ever tasted one of those, it would, if you had one of those in your ice cream or on your pecan pie, it would pretty well ruin the piece of pecan pie you're eating, that's for sure. And he always said, well, those, started me. Oh, no, those are saleable. I said, no, they're not. People won't eat them. Well, they go in the bag just the same. Well, he lost a lot of customers like that. And, so that's one of the things you want to offer, a quality product. Used to be a lot of people around, everybody wants new crop pecans. And the reason for it is a lot of people used to sell pecans, and they really wouldn't put them in a freezer until, maybe first part of the summer, and then they keep them just below freezing instead of way on down to zero. So it made a lot of difference and stuff, and it kind of got people where they didn't want last year because they were kind of rancid and old tasting. But when you put them in the late fall and put them down, get them dry and put them right down to zero, keep them, we pull them out and crack them. Now I've got a lot of people that just soon have, do you have last year's pecans? We sure like those better than this year's sort of stuff. So one of those things, just kind of educating the customers and being real friendly to them, and I think having a nice place to look at and stuff is, if you're successful, they feel successful too. So as of that, I guess that Kelly pretty well got me figured up. I guess if you want to take over or turn it over, we'll go from there.
Sure, great. Thanks so much, Dan. So what a wealth of information there. We can turn it over to the Q&A. We've got a couple of folks joining us live, so I don't know if anybody on the line has questions. You should have a pop-up where you can get in the queue there, and your mic will turn on so you can use your voice to chat, or type something in the chat box there. To get the ball rolling, I'm curious if you could say...
Ask me anything. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'll tell you anything.
Okay. Well, I wrote down lots of questions here. Just the grafting process. Is pecan grafting any different than other grafting, or what's that process look like for you?
Normally, pecan grafting is a little tougher compared to, like apples and peaches and, fruit trees and stuff. Good graft on a fruit tree, they say get 98, 99% take. If we figure we get a 75% take then the following year, we're pretty happy. Hardwoods are quite a bit harder to graft than others. And then some trees just won't take a graft. Some trees, we put on maybe 8 or 10 grafts and it never did take, so I just cut the tree down. But not many of that ever happens. But yeah, it's a little different job, and it's about a 3-week, pretty intensive. We're kind of just catching up and following up on our younger orchards. We're pretty well all those are all grafted. We're just kind of hit and miss on a few of those. But we've thinned some other trees out in our main orchard and some varieties that weren't doing very good for us, and we're going to be grafting quite a few of those, regrafting those to some improved varieties that are doing a lot better now than what we used to have in there.
So at this point, do you have sort of some new trees as well as year-old?
The new varieties, yeah, we do. We have the new varieties, and we also have the older varieties also. But the Pawnees, the Kansas, that sort of stuff we can raise up here, and we're grafting a lot of those. We're also grafting a lot of Shepherds. That's pretty nice now we found here. It's really cold hardy. Produces pretty good every year. Got shells out well, and it's good all around nut. Doesn't have a lot of problems with it. Doesn't have scab. That's kind of the main thing is we're grafting varieties that don't get the fungal scab disease like some varieties do.
It's more common in some than others.
Yes, it sure is.
Okay. What do you do with the excess shells and dust that you showed in those garbage cans? Are those shipped somewhere or what?
Oh, good question. I was going to talk about that and I forgot. Actually, those I got a few people that come and get them, and they put them out, and let the turkey and the coons and the possums and the crows and blue jays scratch through it and stuff, and kind of wildlife food stuff. But mainly what we do, we put it in wagons or stuff, and then we scatter it out there and on the fields and stuff with a spreader, which makes it, puts it back on some of the soil and stuff and gets it out of there. It has some nut meats and stuff in it, so I really want to use it mulch around a building or something like that, because I'm not that efficient a sheller and what the big boys are that are doing millions and millions of pounds a year. So I'm stuck with trying to get those rid of somewhere, like I say, and some people even buy them to smoke with, and I don't know, man. I tell you what, I smell some burnt pecan shells and pecan nut meats. They don't smell very good to me, but whatever. It kind of goes from there.
Okay, yeah, it seems like it's useful material, so I'm glad.
Yeah, it makes good fertilizer. I mean, put it out on the soil, scatter it out on the fields. It's great for that.
Yeah. Huh. Well, just a reminder, if anybody's got questions out there, feel free to chime in. I think I've got one more question here. I'm so curious about all these kind of side businesses, or you're also doing buffalo, you're also doing pumpkins, you're also doing peaches, and it's fascinating that at this point it's all just to get people on the property so that they then buy other things in the pecans, and they see the full picture.
Yeah, that's it. Like I say, we're not doing that now. We're not, since the store's only open 3 months out of the year now. We're not raising the sweet corn, doing the pumpkins, the peaches, and like I say, we're out of the buffalo and pecan business. I'm 63 years old, and it's, kind of starting to slow down. I've got everything paid for, so, back then, especially in the 80s, the farm deal hurt us just as bad as it everybody else, and all through there in the 80s, we were scratching away to make a living and kind of keep our head above water and keep the farm still, without going under, and it was a pretty rough time then. But now we've, all that's passed, and a lot of our hard work has paid off. And like I said, we made money on the peaches, we made money on the sweet corn. Like I say, it doesn't take a whole lot to raise an acre of pumpkins or two, and like I say, I hate to think, but probably made back then about $3,000 or $4,000 an acre off those pumpkins just by giving them away. And I've been lucky to sell $100 worth of pumpkins a year if I hadn't have done it the other way. So, it works out.
Okay. So moving forward, what's the you'll focus on the pecans, your haying, anything else on the horizon for you?
The pecans and stuff, and everybody asks me, Dan, are you going to plant any more pecan trees and stuff? And and I look kind of at them. I said, boy, I got a nice little spot down there. I could put 15 acres in. And, do just about right. You got good air drainage, and it's a really good piece of ground. I could get those in production probably about 12, 14 years, and I said, I'll be 75 then. I don't think I want to mess with them then, mess with harvesting and all that stuff up in there. So I don't know. I guess I'm done planting. I guess maybe I've kind of done a lot of stuff, but who knows? You never know what might happen. In this sort of deal.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about CRP ground or any kind of prairie program or anything like that?
I tell you what, I did have a 15-year tree CRP, and we had pecans planted in there also, and we had a lot of trees in there. And then when it came out of the 15 years, we took all the other trees out, and we're working on a pecan orchard now. It's way behind all the others because it didn't get the care it needed like we would keep a regular orchard, and kind of helped got us a little orchard started that way down there. But as far as any other CRP and sort of stuff, I'm not eligible for that stuff anymore. There's income limits that say I can't do that, so that's I'm out of all the government programs, so I don't mess with government programs.
Gotcha. Yeah, you have enough going on for sure.
Yeah, and the government programs are nice, but they all got hooks in them. You take the money, you gotta follow the rules and whatever, and I kind of like to be a little different and maybe not follow all the exact rules. I mean, I'm not what I'm saying. I mean the government rules that they want to impose on you. So that's
sure.
one of those things.
Yeah. Well, you've certainly got a smooth running business. It sounds like everything's kind of in line. Yeah.
Everything kind of works. Like I say, I've been doing it for a long time, and everything's kind of working. And we've got a lot of we've got some good equipment. I don't have to have a lot of labor, which is kind of nice. I got a fellow that comes down and helps me harvest. Old college buddy of mine that comes down and helps, and I got a couple of gals, 3 that help back here in the cracking room, and we're working in the back. And we're normally out here about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, so they can pick their kids up and go home to school and stuff. So it helps out them, and they're kind of homemakers, and they're making some Christmas spending money, and I pay them pretty good, and they work good. So it all works out well for me, and I've been lucky enough to hire some good help back there in the back.
Yeah. Well, kind of reflecting on all your years in the business, anything you would do differently? Kind of big lessons, takeaways?
When we started planting all these pecan trees, there wasn't anybody out there to ask what we should do, and it was all a tremendous amount of trial by error. I wish, I could go back and redo that all again, and, I wouldn't have planted those or grafted those varieties that I wouldn't have. Probably in my younger years, I probably would have taken a little better care of the orchards and probably got them in production a little bit sooner, quite a bit sooner than what I did. But trying to run a buffalo herd and farm and all this kind of stuff, and then with the grass seed business and everything else, the pecans kind of took a second kind of back seat to everything compared to the buffalo and the grass seed. But that's really where the money was, and the pecan trees weren't producing. Well, now the pecan trees are producing, and they're producing a pretty good profit. And like I say, the buffalo and the gamma grass seed are kind of got out of those businesses. So strictly now just working on pecans, and I enjoy it. I really do. It's a lot of fun, and there's something to do year round. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is that you just don't plant a pecan tree and forget it and just go harvest nuts. There's something to do year round in a pecan orchard, whether it's mowing or fertilizing or spraying or harvesting or pruning and and all that kind of stuff, and thinning trees, because you never want a pecan tree really touch another one. We're probably going to take out another 500 trees this winter in our main orchards and stuff, and about every couple of years, 3 or 4 years, we take out 3, 4, 500 trees, and that's a big job to cut them down and stack them and burn them and get rid of them. So it's one of those things.
And that's just because they're growing enough to touch each other?
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of first employee had years ago worked for me, and worked for me for 30 years, and he grafted most of these trees out here on the farm, and I told Les, we're going to cut down a bunch of trees this winter. We're going to cut down all these others. Oh man, we spent all the time and money, and graft them and prune them, everything else, and spray around them. You're going to cut them down? I said, yeah, but if we take half the trees out of this orchard, we'll double our production within a couple of years. He didn't believe me until a couple of years later, and he couldn't believe what happened, how much better the trees looked, and how much better they produce. When you produce pecans all the way around, the tree instead of just on the very top. I'm shooting for 1,000 pounds the acre. Some of these older growths are not grafted. They get a couple of 100 pounds the acre. They're doing pretty good. And I'm shooting 5 times as much as what they're getting. Like I said, we try to average 1,000 pounds of nuts the acre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's really about quality over quantity with pecans.
Yeah. So, and with the wholesale price of pecans the past few years, $2.50, $3 a pound, it pays pretty good. Can't complain.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So.
Well, any final words or last things you want to say to the audience here?
No, I guess that's about it. I mean, it's one of those things that they enjoy it, and like I say, it's a livelihood for my wife and I, and just keep going on.
All right, great final words to end on. Well, thanks so much, Dan, for your expertise and your time this evening.
Okay, Kelly, thank you.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for joining us, and definitely take a look at the rest of our fall Nutshell series. There's some great folks coming up, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Dan.
Okay. You bet. Thank you.